This is Charlotte EAS, and today I'm going to come up with an updated weather radio collection video today. The last time I made one of these was in November when I had 38 no weather radios. Since then, I have collected quite a few more, and today I'm just going to go over every single radio that I've owned, when I've owned them, and etc. So yeah, hope you all enjoy. Now, we're going to start over by my desk with the Radio Shack 12-259 Silver. I bought this radio back in September, and within 1 day of owning it, the tuner died. Well, it wasn't until 3 days ago, give or take, when Landon, Weather Radio Guru, huge thanks to him, fixed this radio.
Hours. Highs in the lower 70s. Monday night, mostly cloudy with a...
The tuner died about 1 day after owning it, and I put it out of service for months, and then he finally fixed it a long time after that. I didn't ask him. He figured out how to fix the tuners in these radios, and so I shipped it to him, and he was able to fix it, and it's back in service. 259 is a great radio. There are multiple variants. You have ones that come in beige, this one comes in silver, and the silvers are the ones that have the tuner issues, but it's a highly reliable radio if the tuner doesn't die. The siren sounds great, the channel's pretty good. I'd say the HH is better, but the 259, great radio. So, next one. We're going to go with the Recomer 1650C. The reason why this is the 50C is because the alert volume only goes up to 16. Very good radio, has AM and FM tuning, alert blocking as well. You can set your county codes, your channel, siren volume. I have mine maxed at 16, although the speaker's not as loud as the 1630, but that's besides the point. All of the alert history, captured quite a few weeklies off of there.
Degrees.
Reception's pretty good.
In North Carolina, temperatures were between 46 and 51 degrees.
Currently, I have every single radio except for my WR10 and my 12-382 on KHC27, just because I forgot to change the channel. Didn't really want to change the channel, and my radios activate better on KHC27 right now. So for tomorrow's weekly, I'm going to keep this on it. But the 1650, it's a pretty reliable radio as a whole. These activate for absolutely everything, even if the reception is pretty bad. I collected this radio in, also it was September of last year, 2022, when I collected this guy. This was my 29th radio, I believe. Next one is the BC370 CRS. I collected this one in November after my first Uniden Bearcat WX100 died. This is a fantastic radio for a number of reasons. First, it has scanning, and then it also has AM and FM tuning, and it decodes, well, I wouldn't say it decodes, it activates for AM and FM alerts, unlike any other radio that is out there. This is, besides the First Alert WX268, this one goes off for AM and FM alerts, which is really cool. Now, I currently have it on station
into 20 miles an hour with gusts.
KHC27 just for now. For tomorrow, usually I put this on like K-Love or some other station to monitor, but it's a fantastic radio. These are quite rare now. You can find them every now and then, but they are more rare than they used to be. So if you can try to find one, pick one up and make sure it's a reasonable price. I paid about $60 for this one, which is right about what one should cost. I'd say about $50, and this thing has a ton of features in it. So, highly recommend finding a BC370 CRS if you can find one. Next one is my second Radio Shack 12-261. I got this one also in September of 2022. This one, again, just like my other 261, it's the same thing. It's an 04. I didn't find an 03. I was like, you know what, why not just buy another 04? Nothing wrong with it. But it works. Reception's great.
Thursday, mostly cloudy in the...
As that beautiful siren that the 521s and the 262s have. So I love this 261. It's a great radio as a whole. There's not a ton of features. It has the same menu as most Radio Shacks, but it's a great radio as a whole. Next is the WR10. This activates off of 1050 as that big, again, police siren kind of thing.
Friday, sunny, breezy with highs in the lower 80s.
I won't demonstrate the siren because it's freaking loud as crap anyway, but it's a good 1050 hertz radio. The reception is questionable, but because WXL70 is not too far away from my location, it activates accordingly. And it does a great job. It definitely adds a whole new array of a siren to the collection, and you can hear it loudly. It's a pretty good radio as a whole. Reception is not great. It's very easy to set up, not hard at all. It's a good local station radio as a whole. So that's all the radios on my desk so far. I've changed this setup a couple times, especially over there on my other table, but now we're going to move to my bookcase. And over here, this is before I move on to my table, we're going to go with the Midland ER 210. And this radio is absolutely fantastic for a number of reasons. First things first, it has a flashlight with 2 modes. This is the dimmest mode. Then it has super bright mode, which is fantastic. And then it has SOS as well. But it also has AM and FM. This is a 1050 hertz radio as well. Runs off of battery. It can get powered by solar and a hand crank. So it's packed with features.
21 and the relative humidity 28%. The wind was southeast at 6 miles an hour. The pressure was 30.38 inches instead.
Has great reception. It's a fantastic DXing radio, so DXing multiple different stations. It does an awesome job at doing that. Reception's fantastic. It's a great all-purpose emergency radio. If you're going on a hike, you're going out somewhere, it's a fantastic radio as a whole. So highly recommend picking one up. And they're pretty cheap. If you can find one, you could pick one up for about $20. That's about what I spent for this one. Next one below it is the Midland 74200. I got this one in June of 2021. This was my 13th weather radio. And it's pretty good. The reception's questionable, especially over here on this bookcase. It's questionable, but it works. I don't know why that's...
Forecast for Rockville and vicinity.
The setup is atrocious. I mean, setting up the time, the date, you can only go up. There's no menu select button. You have to use the D-pad to be able to select the channels. So, overall, as far as the setup, it's a pain. But the radio itself is good old vintage Midland radio. It's pretty good as a whole. Nothing much I can really say about it, but it activates with pretty much everything. All the weeklies, most of the alerts that I've captured, it's gone off. I've had this thing for quite a bit. It served me very well. Next radio is going to be the Radio Shack 12-382. This is the second 12-382. The reason why I bought this is because my first 382, the tuner kept dying, but then this one also has tuner issues as well. But so far it's working. The tuner's died multiple times, but now it's recovered.
It was 44 degrees. Elsewhere in North Carolina, it was partly cloudy.
It has a weak tuner. It's not like a fully strong tuner at all, but it does the job pretty good. It has a pretty dang cool display. It activates for everything. The 382 is a lot like, it's the predecessor to the 261, but it's a pretty reliable radio. If you can get 07 year models, those don't have the tuner issue as much. The late 07s do, but the early 07s don't. This is an 08. My other one is an 09. Both of those can have the tuner problem. If you have a radio that has a tuner problem, ship it to Weather Radio Guru or Landon. He can help you fix one. He's fixed 2 of my radios that have had tuner issues. So, great. This radio is a modded Radio Shack 12-250. And this also came from Weather Radio Guru. I bought this for about 30-something bucks with free shipping. It's a fantastic radio. I've heard great things about vintage Radio Shacks. They're highly reliable. But this one has a modded backlight my camera will focus here. Modded backlight that changes colors, which is super cool. Landon also can mod radios as well. He can add different lighting arrays to the display. He's very talented at knowing what to do with the internals of radios. So if you want a radio modded or with a cool display, definitely check him out. He's fantastic. But 12-250, reception's pretty good. The speaker quality on the 12-250 is not fantastic, just like the 74-200 is not the greatest. But it does the job.
The total precipitation for the year still stands at 10.27 inches. Sunset tonight is at 7:36 p.m.
It does the job. Now, we'll see if it activates for the weekly tomorrow. I hope it does, but overall, it's a great radio. It's really cool. It's the only modded radio that I own, so thank you, Landon, for that one. Next is this radio I've had for a very long time. This is my third radio I've ever collected, the Midland NWR 300 version 5 Deluxe. Now, between the version 5 and the Deluxe, the V5 has the traditional V5 has letters at the bottom that say all hazards weather alert radio. Well, this one does not. And the Deluxe versions do not have the tuner problems. The V5s do. So this is a Deluxe. The 300s are a legendary radio for a ton of reasons. They have AM and FM, great reception, great reliability. They activate for absolutely everything. Nothing wrong. I got this radio Christmas Day 2016. I've had this thing for a long time.
Degrees, the dew point 21, and the relative humidity 28%.
It has served me an incredibly long time. It's activated for everything. If you want a very reliable radio, highly recommend picking up a 300 Deluxe version 8, or even an old vintage version 4 or a V1 if you can find one. Those are very rare, but if you can find a V1, buy one. But love this thing. Next is the Recomer 1630. I've had this radio since 2020. I got this in November of 2020. Again, just like the R1650, it has a few less features than the 1650. First and foremost, it does not have AM and FM, but as far as a multi-purpose radio, it does the job. It gets good reception.
And 51 at Charleston. Once again at 11 p.m. at the Rock Hill Airport, it was 44 degrees and parking.
As a loud siren, it's definitely cut out for the work. It activates for everything. See, I've gotten all these weeklies, SBRs from that one event, TOA, a bunch of weekly tests. It's activated for everything as well. So Recom in general, Recom's very highly reliable. I highly recommend picking one up, even if it's not a rare model. 1630, very good radio. Had it for a while. This radio is where everything began. So I started EAS back in 2020, but I've had a weather radio for 10 years plus now. The 08500 RX my dad got for the family. He said back in 2012 that this was the family weather radio. And if it wasn't for this radio, I do not know if I would have ever gotten into EAS. It has been in service off and on. It's been in service the last few years, but it's been around for 10. It's very reliable radio, although it does not have a siren for advisory and watch, but it has a loud beep for warning. The scroll is really cool. It has one of the coolest scrolling things I've ever seen. That's one of the cooler parts about this thing. The antenna has broken in 2 locations. That's because of old age, but it still activates and works as it should. Although the tuner has gone out twice, if I restart it, it will come back on like it's brand new.
Showers. Windy with highs around 80. Chance of rain 40%.
But it still does the job after all this time. But this is the radio. Every EAS enthusiast has a radio that started it all. This was mine. The 08500 RX was the one that started it all for me. I love this radio. It reminds me of when I started in the community. Next one is my first WR100 of 7 that I own, but 6 that I have in this room, and this is the version 4. So if y'all may know, I own all 5 versions, except the black and silver, but I own 5 versions WR100. This is the V4. I collected this in February of 2021. This was my 8th weather radio that I collected. This was June 2012. This was 2021 in February.
High of 87 degrees, which was set in 1935.
And this radio activates most of the time. I'd say 90% of the time it goes off again, just like any WR100 is an absolutely legendary radio. The menu is very simple. You have time, alarm, channel, same set, any. Alert type, test, most iconic siren in the EAS community by a mile. Again, WR100, these are fairly common. You can easily buy the V4s. V4s are very common. Try picking one up. I recommend it. Next one is the ER50. I just recently got this about a week ago. And again, a lot like the ER210, it's packed with features, AM and FM. I'll go with a quick run over. AM and FM has an even brighter flashlight. Look at that. Unbelievable backlight. Great reception. Has outstanding battery life. It charges with solar in the hand crank, so it's, again, fantastic outdoor radio. Highly recommend picking one up. Again, they're quite common as well. It's one of Midland's newer radios that they've made, so I love the siren on it too. It's also a 1050 hertz. Both the ER210 and the ER50 both don't activate for sane, but it doesn't matter. It's a great radio. Next one, I got this one also in September. If you want to know what month I collected my most radios, it was September where I collected 14 in a single month. This radio it's pretty good. It's a good vintage first alert. The menu is a little bit confusing because you do not have any menu select button, but it activates. It's a good vintage first alert.
The temperature was 45 degrees. Elsewhere in North Carolina,
it activates. Reception's pretty good as a whole. Not much to say about it except it does its job. So I like it personally. I mean, these are becoming a little bit more harder to find, but you can still find one on eBay probably for not bad of a price. So that's basically that. So that ends with that. We're going to go on top of the dresser. I'm going to save the table for last. Actually, I'm going to go on the wall first. This is my second Radio Shack 12-262. If y'all remember my first 262, it had a problem with its decoder. It just would not activate for anything, wouldn't decode the alerts. No matter how good the reception was, it just called it quits. It works. It turns on, the buttons work, everything. But the radio itself will not activate for anything. Doesn't matter the reception. So I was like, all right, fine. Bought another 262. This 262 is an 08. The tuner has not died. The buttons have not died. But it's an 08. I got this in, I think it was January. No, it was February of 2021 as well. So
winds around 5 miles an hour. Thursday.
It activates for everything. It has that iconic 262 sounding siren. Along with the 261s and 382s, has that same sounding siren. Again, the menu, fairly easy setup. Gets good reception, activates perfectly. So, not a lot to say about it. It's a pretty reliable radio. You can find them. They're very common on eBay. Pick one up. Next one is the Radio Shack 12-521. I've had this radio since, this is my first 521. I've had this radio since May of 2021. This was my 12th weather radio I've ever obtained. This is the 12th. The one issue about this radio, at least for me, is the display has gone to crap. So after a while, it'll start getting distorted and you can barely even read the text because it adds new letters and stuff. It's really weird. It has a really wacky display, this particular 521, but it activates and everything works fine. Tuner's fine, everything works.
Sunday night, mostly cloudy with a 50% chance.
This thing has served me almost 2 years now. It's activated for everything. It works. It does its job. So buttons still work. Again, just like the 262, it's the predecessor to the 262. These were made in 09, 010, I believe. Very good radio. If you want a radio that activates for pretty much anything, try to get a 2012 version 521 because those I've heard do not have the tuner issue as bad as the 08s, not 08s, the predecessors before that. So it's fantastic radio. The next one is the Midland WR11, which I just recently collected. I'd been scouring for one for a long time. I did pay a little bit of a hefty price tag of over $70 for this, but most WR11s are going to be priced even higher to upwards of 100 or more. So I used what I could. WR11 is 1050 hertz. And the Reticus keeps beeping for some stupid reason, but the WR11, 1050 hertz, activates, at least for the last weekly. The only issue that I have with this particular radio is the reception is not great.
This is the No Weather Radio. All hazards.
It's getting good reception here, but when I put the radio over here, the reception was terrible. But now since I moved it over here, the reception, it's perfectly fine over here. Same with WXL70, but this is not a good DXer. You do not want to DX on this radio, even on AM and FM. Not the greatest DXing radio on the planet, but the Siren is great. I love it. It's a fantastic radio. They're rare, quite rare actually, and they're expensive. So those are two problems, and the reception's not very good. But other than that, the Siren is pretty cool. It's 1050. It's not sane, but it works. This one, WX150. I collected this one also. Well, no, this was in November as well. No, it was December. It was actually mid-December, not November. I'm thinking of a different radio, but this was in December. WX150. Great radio as a whole. It does not have AM and FM, but again, it activates for pretty much everything. I mean, there was the last weekly test that it went off for last week. So it activates. The Siren is I don't know, sounds really, really high-pitched. This is not the WX200, I believe. This is the 150. This is the older version. Because the newer version, I think, is the WX200, and that thing has a different sounding siren. Slightly different pitch. But highly reliable. I recommend this radio. It's fairly common. You can get these on eBay for a decent price. They do the job. They're very reliable radios. Next one's the Midland WR120B. This is the 2020 version. I got this on New Year's Day, or I ordered it New Year's Eve. It arrived first week of 2023. So this is the first radio I've gotten in 2023. It's the 2020 version, so it's the newest version of WR120 you can get. As a 21 on the serial number. So
Chance of rain 50%. Wednesday night, mostly cloudy. Patchy fog after midnight.
nothing much to say about the 120, except in my opinion, the WR120 is the most reliable Midland you can buy. I mean, it really is. The value you get for the 120, impeccable. It's fantastic. The menu's very easy to set up. It alerts you, very loud siren, extremely loud siren. And it does not have AM and FM like some other radios, but for a traditional no-weather radio to keep your house safe, this one is probably the most recognizable weather radio on the market, probably of all time. The 120 and the WR100 are the two most. So the 120 is incredibly reliable. Highly recommend buying one. If you're a new collector, it's fantastic as a starter radio. So this is the newest version, which means it can decode blue alerts and some of the newer, like snow squall warnings, some of the newer codes that Weather Service offices have implemented. This one can decode it. Like the older versions would just have an unrecognized warning instead of actually being able to decode it, unless you add some alerts. Next radio is the Max Digital. This thing, the Capello is the knockoff, but I'll get to the Capello later. The only issue I have with this radio, it activates, the reception is perfect, as AM and FM. It's okay DXer. The reception, I will say, is very good. The display is the only problem.
First 2023.
I've seen the display on these in other videos, other collectors that have had the Max Digital. The display on the numbers will go out over time to the point where you can't even read the display. But that's the only issue that I have with this. It has the same menu, same thing as the Capello, has the same button beeps, siren. You can add alerts, defeat siren. You have all those nitty gritty features. It's a good radio. It's not as good as some, but it'll get the job done. So, I say it's a pretty good radio. So, that's the Max Digital. Next one is the First Alert 370 American Red Cross FR 370, not just 370, FR 370. This one I collected back, I think it was 2 months ago. I think it was January. It was January of this year. This is a great radio. Good DXer. It picks up the stations pretty nice. I can't really get channel 5 or channel 1, which is WXL 56, but I mean, for KJY 85 and KHC 27 and WXL 70, it picks those up. Even WWF 60 on Buck Mountain, it can pick up pretty well, but it's a really reliable radio. It has the hand crank. It also has a flashlight as well, and it's also solar powered. So just like the ER210 and the ER50, it's another one of those multi-purpose radios that'll get the job done. So this can activate for 1050 and it can activate for SAME, one of the two, just like the Zone Guards has that same technology in it. But it's a good radio.
Gastonia, it was mostly cloudy. The temperature was 49 degrees.
So, highly recommend buying one. You can get them for a decent price on eBay, but try not to pay too much for that. The next radio is the First Alert WX167. I got this one also in January, the same day I got this thing, WX150. The WX268 has AM and FM, and it can decode AM and FM alerts. This one does not have AM and FM, but it's basically the same in all other categories. These have been prone to dying as well. They've been prone to having faulty boards and losing their displays. So I bought this one brand new as well as the WX150. That's why it's probably lasted me so far. But the siren is incredibly loud on this thing. I won't just demonstrate it, but it is very loud. The menu is decently complicated, but it's not too bad. It's a very unique NWR. There are not a lot of these out there. These are semi-rare. They're getting rare. The WX268 is rare, but these are decently rare.
Rain 50%. Wednesday night, mostly cloudy. Patchy fog after midnight. Lows in the upper 40s. South wind.
I'd highly recommend trying to pick one up if you can find one, but the prices, I did pay a lot for this. I did have to pay a hefty price for this. But try not to buy one for over $100. Just don't. They're not worth it. They're about worth maybe $40 at most. So don't try to pay over $100 for this thing. It's a good radio. It activates. It has good reception. So not much to say about it. Next one is the 08510 or 8510, however you want to say it. This one I got this March, earlier this month. I finally obtained one. I had been looking for one. I saw this one up for auction, and I decided to bid $30, and I got it for $25. So I was like, why not? It's a good deal. So just like this is the predecessor to the 08500 RX, same menu, same scrolling display, has the same features and all, alert blocking, has everything.
Saturday night, clear.
Now, they're high-pitched sirens versions, and they're ones that don't have the high-pitched siren. I don't know which one this is. It's only gone off for one weekly, and with all the other radios blaring, it's hard to tell if this thing's high-pitched. I don't think it is a high-pitched one, though. I didn't hear it super evidently on the weekly, but we'll see tomorrow if I hear it. But it's good radio. If you can find one, these are getting rare, but if you can find one, recommend picking one up. Next is, I have sought after this thing for so long, and I finally got one. This I got in, again, earlier this month, the 12-996. I had been looking for a 996 for months, and I finally came across one for about $70. Again, slightly overpriced, but it does do the job.
Occurred at 5:40 a.m. The normal low.
The super unique thing about this radio, it's AM and FM, but it's a touch screen. It has speaker quality a lot like the Sanji NCL 100, a lot like it. The display is fantastic. It's very bright. I mean, it's blinding, honestly. It's a very bright display. it is the best, besides the 519, it is the best Radio Shack radio that Radio Shack has made. By far. Best NWR by far that Radio Shack has made. In my opinion. Speaker quality is great. Only touchscreen radio that I know of. No weather radio, that is. But it's fantastic as a whole. It's really good. Anyway, I highly recommend picking one up. Next one, I'm going to have to speed run through this video quicker because I'm already at 30 minutes and counting. This is the Midland WR100 version 5. So I've already gone through the version 4, now we're on the version 5. Not a lot to say about this one. These versions, I'll give you a brief run over. These versions have the tuner problem, so the death squeal. This is an earlier version 5 because it has a 7-0 serial number, while the newer versions have upwards of 9-0 to 11. Those were the last years these things were in commission, was 2011. This one I think is an 07 to 08. So it's a newer version. And I've had this thing in service since September. So I've had it in service, has not died yet. Again, just like the traditional WR100s, fantastic radio. Highly recommend buying one. Just a WR100 in general. It doesn't have to be V5. I would avoid the V5s, but that's besides the point. Great radio. Now, we move on to the table, which has the most radios that I have on it. Ah, yes. This is where the fun begins. And we're going to start out with probably the hardest radio that I've been able to obtain, and that is the Midland WR100 version 1. White. This is not a black and silver, it is a white. And yes, Midland actually made white version 1s, they made black and silver version 2s. There was a seller on eBay that was selling 6 of these. Any V1 Midland, at least WR100 or 300, is insanely rare. These are extraordinarily rare to come across. Seller was selling 6 of them. And I decided to pick one up because that was an opportunity that you just couldn't pass. And the reason why this thing is getting good reception right now is because I have hooked up to a second external antenna. That's what you have to do. The reception on these things are bad because the antenna is tiny. But I never thought I was going to be able to ever buy a version 1. The closest I was able to buy a version 1 was a black and silver back on October 1st that Ruskin was able to buy. But this one is a treat because it was right place, right time. I was on eBay at the right place at the right time. These are incredibly rare. I don't know how I was able to get one, but I was just at the right place at the right time. And how to tell it's a V1, early version 2s have it, but the same, no dots in between the same, no public alert logo, older NOAA logo, and statement light, and the serial number has to say 306. That's a V1. If you can find one, grab it immediately because these are extremely rare, and there are a bunch of hungry EAS enthusiasts that would love to have one of these, just in general. Even any rare Midland, doesn't have to be a V1, but any rare Midland, a lot of people love to have these, and for good reason. Next one is very similar. It is another WR100, but is the version 2. These were made in 2002 to early 2003. These were made in 2003, 2004. This is an intermediate V2, meaning it was made in mid-2003, give or take. So I bought this radio back in November, around Thanksgiving is when I received this thing in the mail. I was scouring and scouring and scouring for a V2, and finally one came up. Although it was expensive, I paid $100 for this thing. Yes, I did. But it was my first version 2, and I was like, if I'm getting a version 2, it's now. The original V2 had an auction going up for $700. Someone bid $1,000, retracted their bid, and it sold for $700, but apparently the buyer couldn't pay it, and so the seller relisted as a buy it now / auction, either for $100 or whatever, and I was able to pick it up. It was a matter of luck that I was able to pick this up. These are, again, very rare. This is 3-star rarity. This is, I think, 2, maybe. Again, the V2s are more common than the V1s, but the V2s are still very rare to find. And the best way to find these is on eBay. So if you see a V2, no public alert logo, statement light, it's a V2. Pick it up. They're quite rare. Just don't fall for the high prices like I did. Next radio is one of my favorite radios besides these two, and that is the Radio Shack 12-519. This radio I've had since February of 2021. No, 22. February 22. February 18th, if you want to be exact. This radio's been in service it has been in service for 2 years now. No, 1 year. Sorry, 1 year. It's been in service for 1 year. Activates for everything. This is a first header because it was made in 09. This radio has packed with features. It has Skywarn, AM, FM, great DXer, flawless reception as well.
Statesville and Greensboro. In South Carolina, it was clear with a temperature of 42.
It's basically a giant brick. It has Skywarn, although I haven't really used Skywarn, but it has Skywarn feature as well. Across the board, the 519 is, besides the 996, it's one of the best radios constructed by any manufacturer, I think. It really serves a great purpose. I mean, the fact it's the first header is really cool. I'd recommend picking one up. These things are expensive, though, so keep that in mind. Next radio is probably one of my favorite radios of all time, and it is the Midland NWR 301. And I'll give you a brief rundown on how I bought this thing. So seller listed it for $400. I negotiated with the seller, sent him an offer of $85, and he accepted it, which was incredibly lucky. So I was able to buy this thing for about $85 plus shipping, so it was around $90. Yes, that is a bit overpriced for this radio, but it's a WR301. This is incredibly rare to find, and to find for a good price, because the weather radio market nowadays for rare radios is completely screwed. I mean, sellers are selling these things ridiculously, but I bought this earlier this month. Tuner died, shipped it to Landon, he fixed it. It does have one slight issue, and that is if I go to the menu,
30%.
you can see the tuner is still weak. It won't pick up any of the other stations at all. You can hear WXL 70 faint, but as long as it picks up my local station and has a working tuner, it's fine. WR301 it's a beautiful radio because it has a mossy oak camo display. It's when Midland and mossy oak had a collaboration, and then they made this. Basically a version 5 WR300, but in mossy oak. And I, again, must give a huge shout out to Weather Radio Guru for fixing the tuner in this thing. I'm so happy he was able to figure out how to do it. But these are incredibly rare. I'm very lucky to be able to obtain one of these. And it was on the market for a long time. It was on eBay listed for hours, and no one bought it. And I sent the seller an offer, and he accepted it for a more reasonable price. So kudos to that. Next radio is, this is another, I bought this one in September as well, and this is the version 15 HH54VP. That one over there is a V16. Antonio should be shipping me an early V16 with the higher pitch button beeps and siren test, but these are semi-rare, meaning they're not super rare, but they're not super common. You can find them, but you kind of got to wait for a listing to come up from time to time. But the HH54VP is a fantastic handheld. It's handheld. I think they're better than the Radio Shacks. The 993 could be on par with this, but I think the HH really kind of takes the cake. You can hear the button beeps. V15. V15 was the earlier version of the HH. It's fantastic. They do have V14s, but they're only about 3 ever made. So those, you're not going to find one of those. But V15, I highly recommend getting an HH54VP. It's the greatest handheld weather radio that I've owned. It's really fantastic. The next one is from Antonio, and this is a radio that kind of came out of the blue. It was a Midland WR300 version 1. Again, falls under the category as like a version 2. It's extremely rare to find. The listings come up here and then. They do come up, but the version 1 is just, it's another very rare radio to obtain. Has statement light, same functions as a normal WR300, AM, FM, weather band. It does all the normal functions. Although for DXing, I wouldn't recommend it because you have channel bleed through, but that's normal for earlier version Midlands.
Summit, Columbia. It was partly cloudy with a temperature of 48 at Greenville, Spartanburg.
It does activate, but I do have it hooked up to an external antenna. If I take the external antenna off, it won't activate as well. But massive shout out for Antonio for being able to ship this thing. I expressed interest in it the most. He decided to sell it to me for a reasonable price. So, I mean, I'll take a rare radio any day. So I recommend trying to pick a rare 300 up and has the pretty statement light. Anyway, it's a great radio. Next is, probably one of the most reliable NWRs ever made. Sangean CL100. Best speaker quality out of any radio besides the 996. This is the public alert edition as well. It's not that much rarer than the normal, but it is to a degree. This one, across the boards, you can set your presets, different stations for DXing if you want to. The main station sounds amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Thursday night, mostly clear. Lows around 60. Southwest winds 10 to 15 miles an hour with gusts up to 25 miles an hour.
I won't turn on the AM and FM band just because of copyright purposes, but this radio is packed full of features. You can set your siren level. I have that on medium. This thing's siren is insanely loud. Unbelievable. You put that thing on high mode, it is blistering. It has alert blocking, you have defeat siren. It has all the features you want. You can get these for a fairly good price, maybe $40. They're no more worth than $40, I'd say. So, again, if you want an incredibly reliable radio that has a ton of features, buy the CL100. Next one is going to be the Running Snail MD319. This is the O2 version, but it's the emergency kit version, not the version 20. These were made, I think, in 2021, not in 2020. But instead of having AM and FM, it doesn't have AM and FM. Again, it's basically a WR300 knockoff. It's not that impressive, honestly. The siren is a little bit different, but the menu and the display, everything is very replicable to a WR300. So it's kind of a knockoff, but reception's pretty good. The speaker quality isn't fantastic.
This transmitter is serving Rock Hill and the Charlotte metropolitan area.
I got this also in September of 2021. Not 21, 22. This one was my 10th radio that I collected, the CL100. I got that in May of 2021. That one was November as well. Anyway, MD319 is okay. There are better radios out there to buy than the 319, but that's besides the point. Next one is the Beige 259. This is the predecessor. I got this one also in September of last year. This one is the predecessor to the actually, it's the older version of the Silver, but it's the predecessor to me because the tuner on it didn't die. After the tuner on my Silver died, I bought this one. But again, it's the same thing as the regular 259. Nothing to really compliment about it.
70s. Southwest wind.
It activates. It does its job, so not much. Next is the... gotta get into this one. The WX100. And my first WX100 broke. The seller sent me a broken WX100. I was like, all right, fine. I can ship it to Landon. Shipped it to Landon. He couldn't fix it. He sort of fixed it recently, but it's stuck on the off mode where the weather band won't play, won't activate, literally does nothing. There was a faulty chip. There was something wrong with this thing. And I don't know how someone could beat up a WX100 to the point where it doesn't even display a gosh dang thing. And that other, I don't know what the heck that other seller was on. Reputable seller, but sold a broken product. I tried returning it. He only gave me about $50, and I was like, whatever. This is my second WX100. Again, I bought this for a more expensive price. About, again, a lot of money is spent on this thing. Not as much as some WX100s, but still a little bit too much for my liking. Again, if you can purchase a WX100, it's extremely hard to find a reasonable price. So try to find a reasonable price. Now, the WX100, compared to the BC370 or all the other unit-in scanners, it's not as good as the unit-in scanners. But it has one of the most unique sounding sirens I've ever heard, probably on any radio. The reception's great, activates. It's very simple, rare. It's a pretty rare radio, but the market on these things is screwed over.
The current time is 12:13 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Reception's good. I love the siren. That's about the only good part about it is the siren and the reception. Uniden knows how to make their products pretty quality, so. if you can find one for less than $100, get one. They're quite rare and extremely unique. These were made in, I think, 2002. I collected this back in, it was Christmas Eve, actually, when I actually received this. The next radio is one I received more recently that I saw. The Recommer 1650A. This is not the one with the high-low switch, but still, just like a traditional Recommer 1650B, C, D, whatever. This 15A, the difference is it has a statement light, green statement light, and the siren sounds much different. Now, I will say one thing. The reception on the 1650s, the A variants, even the Bs, the reception is not great. So just keep that in mind. The reception is not great. It still has AM and FM banding, whatever, but it's basically the same. It's a rare version of the Recom. It's not extremely rare. This B variants are even more rare than the A's now, I think. But this version is pretty rare to find. So that's all I'll say about that. Next radio is my second 12-521. This thing I got also in December, and that was to replace the other 521 because of the display in case it died. So I decided, you know, why don't I pick up a cheap 521? It was about $28, so it wasn't that bad. So, you know, why don't I just pick up another 521? Anyway, next is the Redicus TR625, and this one I also collected in September, also the same day as the Running Snail. This radio has a ton of flaws. I actually don't recommend buying one of these. The siren is incredibly loud, for one. And the reception is okay, but the firmware sucks. The display sucks. There's not a lot of good features to this thing. It's like a knockoff version of a WR120. It's not that good. I mean, if you leave it be, it'll activate, it'll do what it needs to do, but it's still kind of just, it's not great. Redicus did not put a lot of thought into this thing.
Southwest winds 15 to 20
The other thing
miles
that is crazy is that they have this radio, instead of megahertz, it's kilohertz. What are you doing, Redicus, when you design this thing? I don't understand. Anyway, the siren and the reception is about the only good thing about it. Everything else kind of sucks. Not gonna lie, I got this thing brand new for about $30. Don't pay more than a dime over 30 for that thing. It's not worth a dime more than that. Anyway, moving on. Next one is WR400. I got this one August of 2022, so late August. This is my 21st weather radio that I owned. This was my 24th. This radio, just like the WR300, it's even better. Display's better. It, you know, activates just the same, similar. The siren is different, slightly different. It's like higher pitch. It's kind of like putting a WR300 and an HH together and kind of making it its own thing.
Atlanta, temperatures were between 45 and 50 degrees.
The reception's fantastic. This thing is well put together. So this is another one of Midland's best radios that they've ever made. The WR400. Highly recommend buying one. These were overpriced. These were going over $80 when I bought it. Now the prices have dropped. You can find one of these probably used for about $40 to $50. So that's about what that thing is worth. It's not worth what I paid. But at the time in late August, these things were going over 70. So it's a great radio. Recommend picking one up. Next one is just like the Max Digital. I mentioned the Capello earlier, but it's basically the same thing. So again, it's the knockoff version of the Max Digital. I've heard opposite. I've heard the Capello's and the Max Digital's knockoff version of the Capello, but yeah, it's whatever. It has the same siren, same button beep, same AM and FM. It's just slightly different. You don't have the silver band that goes across the middle. It's about the same thing. Great reception. That's the only thing I'll give it. Great reception, and it activates for everything. So, yeah. Next is my third 12-262. This is the 07 version, I believe. This is, again, I decided to pick another 262 up just in case. I had two before. Why not get a second one? There's a little bit of something wrong with the display. You can kind of see the little discoloration, but again,
Thursday night,
almost thought the tuner died there for a second. I was about to scream.
Southwest.
Again, just like a normal 262, got this thing brand new for about $20-some. Activates for everything. So anyway, next one, the Viagra pill, the Radio Shack 12-991. Yes, the pill of all radios, the 991. When did I buy this thing? Well, I bought this one April of 2021. I've had this thing almost 2 years. This is almost going on its second year service. 991s with the red logo are rarer than the ones with the white logo, just note to self. Has no AM and FM. Shut up, Redicus. Come on now. Come on. You keep doing that every night. Anyway, the 991 has no menu select button, so the menu is a little bit of a pain. The reception on it, I'm going to move this antenna out of the way real quick. The reception on it is really good. It's well built. No tuner problems with these.
Lows in the mid-50s.
It's like taking a 12-993 and making it a desktop radio. That's pretty much what it is. It's a good DXer. It gets good signal, good reception. So for channel DXing, it's fantastic. If you can find one, they are rare now. They are pretty rare now. They're not 3-star rarity, but they're about 2 to 1 star rarity. So they are rare, especially the ones with the red logo. So I've had one for a while now. So good radio. The next radio is my second overall radio that I collected, and that is the Midland WR 120 EZ. This one I got July 25th, 2015. So I've had a 120 for, this is going on its almost 8th year of service. It's been going on a long time. It's the Energizer Bunny that keeps going. So the EZ versus the 120B, not a lot of difference. The difference is same codes, a couple new codes were added, but again, not much to say about the 120. It's very reliable as a whole. Just recommend picking one. EZ or B, doesn't matter.
It was partly cloudy.
This is a very special radio in my heart because it's the second radio I collected. So it's a very, very special radio. Next one is the white AlertWorks, or AlertWorks ER10WH. This one I collected Halloween of 2021. This is my 6th weather radio as a whole that I collected. 6th radio. Packed with quite a few features. I love the siren. Siren sounds cool. It's very unique siren. Speaker quality.
It was partly cloudy.
Has a quiet speaker. First header, just like these are first headers. I have 10 first header radios. Some of them are duplicates, but I have 10 first header radios. First header, just like the 521s, 262s, 261s, and 382s. They're all first headers. First header radio. The white versions are a little bit more rare than the black ones. The black ones are the older versions. These are the newer. But these are very reliable radios. If you want a first header, this is what I would do. I'd buy a 262 or one of these. So, has alert blocking and all the bells and whistles. So, I like it a lot. Next is the first 261 I bought, which is in October of 2021 as well. So, I've had this thing in service for over 2 years. Again, or it's going to be going on 2 years eventually. Again, it's very reliable, again, just like the other 261. Don't have much to say about that. First 382, I collected this February 18th, 2022, so it's been going on in service for over a year. The tuner has died multiple times, but so far is working at the moment, so not much to say. Version 16 HH, collected this one roughly in, December of 2020, I believe. This was my 7th radio, and to confirm it is a V16. It does have different button beeps.
Mostly cloudy in the morning.
Again, just like the other HH, highly reliable. These are the more common versions. So the next radio after that is the possessed brick of the Zone Guard, or whatever, the Zone Guard, Eton Zone Guard. This is the first. These are truly possessed. They also activate for SAM and 1050, just like the FR370. These, I don't know, they're okay. Zone Guards are just okay radios as a whole. They have AM, FM. They are kind of confusing to set up. They activate kind of most of the time. They're just not that, they're not fantastic. They're better radios that you can buy. But I was like, well, that's a Zone Guard. This is my 20th radio that I collected, so pretty good landmark on the collection. Then you have the Zone Guard Plus, and the cool part about the Zone Guard Plus is it has these two little modules here. So module 1, module 2. So it's two alert modules that go along with it that also beep. Adds some flavor to the siren, I guess. Basically, it's the same thing as the regular Zone Guard, except it's a black and silver that failed, pretty much. It's like trying to be a black and silver, but yet it's not as rare, not as iconic, or not half as good. So, I mean, they're better radios than the Zone Guards, but they're okay, and they're decently reliable. Next radio is another radio I collected in September, and this is the Black Alert Works. Again, same thing as the white, just in black, and it's slightly louder than the other one, but not much to say about it as a whole. It's the same as the other Alert Works, so it's just a different color. Anyway, next radio is the 08550 RX. I can't remember the exact model number. My first one, which is my 4th radio, that one had a speaker failure. It died. Put it out of service, bought another one for about $15. So replaced it with a red variant with an orange screen. You also have one that's camouflage. So it's pretty good. Same thing as the other Accurite. Same display, same everything. So not much to say. All right, that concludes the table. You want to know, I have 26 radios that are currently working on this table. So that concludes that. Next is going to go the final bit. It's going to go on the wall. And we're going to start with the middle NWR 30. The predecessor, the rare version of basically the 74210. What's the difference between the WR30 and the 74210? Well, I'll give you a rundown. The WR30 is nothing different really at all. The speaker quality on the WR30 is vastly better. I'll give it that, as you can tell.
Cloudy.
Compared to this.
In the afternoon. Highs around.
Like the speaker quality on that sucks. Speaker quality on the WR30 sounds good. Sounds better. The difference is the WR30 beeps for the test. 74210 doesn't. That's your difference. It's a rare version of... It's rare. That's all I have to say. It's rare. Not much to say about it. But the display, The menu kind of sucks. It activates. It's whatever. Then you have the 74210, which is basically the same thing. And that, again, I bought this one October of 2022. This one was September of 2022, September 30th. The next radio is my second version 2, which I won at a local auction because I saw this radio on Goodwill. It was going up for auction in Goodwill in Charlotte, so I was like, I'm going to bid on a version 2 in my home city. I did spend a little bit too much money on this thing. So, a version 2 is not worth over $100. It's not worth $80. It's not worth $60. It's worth at best $30. I'd give it $40 because it's rare. But I spent too much on this thing. But again, it's another rare Midland. I'm not going to buy another version 2 unless I see a really cheap version. Pull a Weather Radio Guru and have like 4 of them. But most of his V2s were given to him. That's the reason why he had so many. But this is my second version 2. So I have 2 V2s and a V1. That's besides the point. But again, just like my other V2, same thing with the pretty statement light. That's about it. Last radio that I've collected, at least in this room. And that's the Milan WR100 version 3. Now, the 3 variants have, remember the version 2s, the ones, they do not have the siren test. The V3s implemented the siren test. These were made in 2004, 2005, upwards in 2006, before they were discontinued, and then you had the V4s. But how you can tell it's V3s, it has a public alert logo. That's the first giveaway. And the second has monitor on the bottom of it. I've seen some version 4s have monitor on it as well, but that's how you tell. I bought that thing brand new in box. So that concludes my collection. Over the years, I've collected a total of 57, actually a total of 59. A total of 57 working NWRs that are currently in service. 56 in this room. Antonio's V3 is out in one of the other bedrooms. But a total of 56. Now, I know this video went on for a while. It was an hour long, but I had a lot to cover. Tried to go a little bit more in depth, probably too in depth, honestly, for a collection video. I hope everyone enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all for being a part of my collecting hobby. And I'll see y'all in the next video.